here in the south of France, sailing the Windelo 50 Adventure, a blue water cruising catamaran. Now there's plenty of blue water cruising catamarans out there now, but this one is definitely a little bit different. Why, you may ask? Well, for a start, the hull is constructed of a combination of volcanic basalt fibres with a core made of recycled plastic bottles, or PET they call it. So that's pretty different. And when you combine that with hybrid engine, which consists of a diesel generator with electric motors and masses of solar panels, you have what is probably the most environmentally friendly production yacht out there. And in addition to that, it's a very comfortable yacht, very nice to be on. So I'm looking forward to going sailing today. So the boat has been designed by Baron Newman, and they're a well-established team. They've worked with Outremer, Katana, many big cruising cat designs and racing boats as well. This particular boat, they wanted to make it fast and seaworthy and comfortable. So really, the bows are very fine, the entrance is fine, and that is obviously important for basic good sailing, less resistance. In order to get around that, there are certain problems with that. Of course, a very fine bow, so you've got to be careful with your weight distribution. What they've done with this boat is they've shifted the cockpit well back, so you have a long bow section, and then the weight distribution is good because they've moved the cockpit back. They've also put crash boxes in at both bows, so you've got a good level of safety. You hit something, you're still going to stay afloat, which is obviously important. Aside from that, they've also, the other big problem that multi-hulls have, or they can have, is slamming. Certainly if you're on an ocean passage, the last thing you want is your boat crashing into waves. And if you have a sort of front deck with poor weight distribution, the cockpit too far forward, that can happen. So what they've done there is they've made sure the nacelle, that's the central island, is raised up sufficiently that that's not a problem. And that, combined with the fact it's set back, means that you have a very well-balanced boat that behaves very well in big ocean swells, because this is a boat that's designed for crossing oceans. So next up, the rig. Very important, obviously. On this boat, you have carbon fibre rigging, very tough, and then you can have a carbon mainmast and boom, but that's an option. Standard is aluminium. You've got several choices of sails, standard Dacron, Hydronet, which is more durable, and then high performance materials as well. The main is square topped, that does most of the driving of the boat, but obviously you have a decent sized head sail too with this large foredeck. In total, the sail area is 127 square meters, so it's a big sail area that will really drive a boat along of this size and weight. Obviously it's easy to handle as well as self-tacking jib, so no great shakes there in terms of you're not going to be battling on the foredeck. On top of that, you have a short bowsprit, and you can put, in fact we've got rigged a big Jenica on that, which is obviously a game changer in light winds. So all in all, you've got the potential to sail fast even in pretty modest conditions. And that covers the rig. And the next thing we'll talk about, dagger boards. Very important on a blue water multi-hull. Obviously you want to have decent upwind performance, and without dagger boards that's pretty tough. So Windelo obviously fitted them, and they're pretty serious as well. 2.3 meters deep, so that gives you a lot of grip into the wind, and trust me, that's important, having sailed on ones that sag away to leeward when you try and go on the wind. it's vital. So they're fiberglass, they drop down under their own weight, and you can raise them up with a winch. These ones, what's notable about the ones on this boat are that they are completely centrally placed in the middle of the hull. And that sounds logical, but actually it's often not the case. They're often moved slightly outboard. And the reason for that is because they take up a lot of space right in the middle of the hull. So the internal volume is less, but in terms of the positioning, this is the optimal position, and Windelo have decided that's where they should be. So that really helps, and I'm looking forward to testing them when we sail upwind shortly. I've already said this boat's a little bit different in many ways, and I mean that in a positive way, and perhaps the biggest difference from most boats is that the sailing area is here, forward, well forward. Usually it would be aft, and that has a number of advantages, and the main one is just your vision of when you're sailing. You can see the head sail and the mainsail, much easier to check the trim, and you feel more involved. But it's also good for manoeuvring because you can see both bows, and that really helps, and being centrally positioned is actually very nice for manoeuvring, I found as well. So many positives. Moving forward, you have these two big lockers for storage, both the same essentially, and a lot of volume within, and there's a diesel tank in each for your generator, so a huge amount of diesel storage there as well. So that's reassuring more than anything else. For ocean crossings, you've got a backup plan. Beyond that, you have this beam running forward, which they've tucked all the running rigging inside that beam, which obviously keeps things tidy. And then beyond that, there's a latitudinal beam here, and it's worth mentioning on the sport model that they don't have that, and it's just a small weight saving feature for the sport model, and it looks a little more sporty, but this is the adventure model, so that's obviously retained. So all that remains is to head down below and take a look inside. Okay, so next up, in the sort of sailing area of the boat, and as I said, really unusual because it's so set well forward. And another thing that's not altogether common in cruising cats is twin helms, but obviously twin helms is really nice for your sail handling. You're in the right place to look at your sails on each tack. It's also a lovely position because you've got a very good view of the rig, as I already said, but this little skylight here means you're looking directly up at the mainsail, and on cruising multi-hulls I can tell you it's not always the case that you have a really nice view of the rig, so that's great. Obviously this is the real heartbeat of the boat here, and this here is the nerve centre of the sort of electrical side of the boat, so the batteries, all that are shown. You can have access to all that information right here, and in addition, of course, it's just a standard chart plotter as well, but it's incredible what it shows you. Temperature of the batteries, level of the batteries, everything's there, and obviously the throttles are here for your twin engines. So range wise, the 20 kilowatt motors will give you 2 hours of motoring at 6 knots, so that's 12 miles. Or there's an option for more power, which actually gives you double that, so 4 hours at 6 knots or 24 miles. Now in addition to that, you have the max prop propellers, which hydrogenerate power, and at 8 knots of boat speed under sail, they will generate 1000 watts of power, so that's topping up your batteries nicely. There is also the Fisher Panda genset, which generates 18 kilowatts of power, and that, if you've got that ticking away, will give you a range of 1100 miles. Everything's to hand, and that theme continues with the sailing controls, which are obviously the most important bit of any sailing yacht, and they're all here. Really to hand if you're sailing. You're going to use this winch here as your main winch. In fact, you can basically control everything from one winch, which is extraordinary, and all your running rigging leads up to this winch, and one person can happily handle the boat on their own, which is really quite extraordinary on a 50-foot cruising yacht. That one person can really do everything. These two big winches are obviously extremely useful, but for the most part you use them for raising and lowering the dagger boards. That's their primary aim with those two. So a very carefully thought out setup that gives you excellent levels of control. And one final thing, your anchor winch is also here, so that's a good, you can visually look at how much chain you're dropping, which is also very useful. If you're removed from the anchor winch, then it can make anchoring a little bit more complicated, I find. If you're looking right at it there, you know exactly how much chain you're letting out, which is very handy. Okay, so moving on from the technical area, the sailing area, we move into the saloon, and if you want, you can separate the two off completely with this sliding door, which is handy, but most of the time you're not going to want to do that, because sailing is about sharing the experience. So the concept really is to keep everything open and keep everyone involved, and also, most important, provide a huge amount of light and a very pleasant ambiance, as they say in France. So here we are, and it is an incredibly light space. All these huge windows slide open, so you've got masses of fresh air coming through, which is important here at the moment because it's nice and warm. This door also, the back door, it sort of tilt slides like a garage door. It's extraordinary, you'll see it later, we'll show you. So obviously you've got this incredible sort of indoor-outdoor living area. And the living area itself, Windelo stresses that they are happy to work with a client to customize the boat to their particular taste. So they're very flexible, and each boat's layout will probably be slightly different, even though there is a set layout or a couple of set layouts, but there are a number of changes for each owner, and this particular boat has been customized for the first buyer of the boat. So with this particular boat, the owner has gone for this big pilot berth, which is a feature which if you're on watch and things are very calm, you can relax there and just keep an eye on things, and it's the most comfortable pilot berth I've ever seen. Usually you would have a chart table here as well, but the owner on this boat, you will see later, has a huge office space in one of the hulls, so he's decided he doesn't need that, which is fair enough, but that would generally be a chart table with the seat facing the other way and a table there. But it's best to look on the plans for the various arrangements, but there are also different finish options as well. So there's a yachting finish and a sport finish with different sort of style of decor essentially, but it's a movable feast with the Windelo, which is obviously really, really good. And the upshot is a very comfortable and very light living area, which is a pleasure to be in. Okay, so moving on to the galley area, and again, lots of light, lots of fresh air. I mean, look at the size of this window, it's extraordinary. So I'll just close that for now. But yeah, you get the idea, lots of fresh air and lots of light. And this is a very comfortable cooking area as well. There are two options. This is the U-shaped option, and you can also have an L-shaped galley as well, which the L-shape is actually the standard. But the U-shaped one works very well for cooking, certainly on an ocean passage, because you're nice and enclosed. I like it very much. And the galley area has electric induction hobs and an electric cooker, so no gas, which is obviously nice and safer, and the batteries can happily support that. So that's brilliant. And in addition to that, you also have a huge amount of fridge space. So you've got a 130 litre fridge here, and you can have an additional 130 litre fridge in the starboard hull. So you're not going to go short on chilled goods, which is also very important. There's also an electric dishwasher. So what you have here is a cooking area that is substantially better appointed than many apartments, and very nice it is too. And just in case you're thinking there wasn't quite enough light, if you wish, you can raise this garage door style arrangement and have even more light and even more fresh air coming in. So you just raise it with an electric winch. It's all done on pulleys and block and tackle. So it just gently lifts up, and in fact, to drop it down, it's just there's no hydraulics involved. It just drops down on its own weight, which is also great. And then you really do have an almost entirely outdoor cooking area, which is extraordinary. And yeah, you could chop your vegetables here and then jump over the counter and take a dip. So all in all, it's an extraordinary feature, and there's actually not many multi-hulls that have this garage door arrangement. I can think of only one other manufacturer that does this, but it's really a brilliant feature, which I'm very surprised hasn't been adopted throughout the multi-hull world. But there you have it, a room with a view, or a kitchen with a view, sorry. As you can see, the back door is up and the davits for the dinghy are down. So when that's up, it feels very enclosed, or not very enclosed, but it feels secure. But with it down, you've got this huge open space, and this table can be fitted. It's just stored in a cupboard there, but we put that up and you can have dinner by the sea essentially, and very nice it is too. So heading down below and straight into the master cabin. In fact, it's the master hull, because the whole of the port side is just for the owners. So that gives you an awful lot of space, and what's more, an awful lot of light, because this huge window here makes this an incredibly bright environment, very pleasant, and also with a lovely view. And this obviously has been custom made by the company, and I've not seen one like that before, but it's a really nice feature. The other thing to say really is that the bed is actually oversized on this boat. The owner wanted a larger bed, so this one's 2 meters by 1.8 meters with a slightly thicker mattress, so that was the owner's choice, but well, fair enough, we all like a big bed. But the standard bed is slightly smaller, but they're always set athwartships or across the boat. So yeah, I think that's that about covers this cabin. There's some nice storage space there as well, and there's also a chart plotter, so you can check on your progress even when you're having a nap. On this particular model, this area here is an office, and it's a great office as well. I'm quite jealous. My own office is not nearly as nice, and it's on dry land. But you could also have this as a workshop, or on the standard layout, this is actually a huge shower room and bathroom area. So you can mix and match, but basically this is a custom version, and then the shower and bathroom are actually set between the owner's suite and the office. So various options, but the standard would be a much larger bathroom here. Guest cabin. Standard size bed, which is 1.4 meters by 2 meters, and as you can see, this time it's lengthways. You actually have the choice here, depending on which galley configuration you have. With the U-shaped galley that we have on this boat, it has to be lengthways. With the L shape, it can be athwartships. so that's important. Obviously, again, you have this masses of light, which is lovely, nice view, apart from the jet skier. And underneath the bed, on both sides, there's masses of storage. So underneath the whole of this area here is actually storage. So you could, well, you could put a lot in there essentially. So yeah, a very nice guest cabin really, with a hell of a lot of light. You have another cabin, and this one is again custom made for the owner. So normally it would be a standard double, as you would expect. This is a bunk room, which is actually rather charming, I have to say. And Windelo do all the carpentry in-house, and it shows because it's rather different and rather beautifully done, so that's nice. This is obviously a forward storage area. To have it as a sort of window essentially, or hatch, is that's an option. You don't have to choose that, or you can have that as skipper's accommodation, which is useful if you're planning on having someone run the boat for you, which can be quite nice, let's face it. And I suppose the other thing to say is that there is a escape hatch just here forwards, which is also rather charming. It's certainly it looks very nautical. So yeah, a nice, and again, masses of light. Under sail, it's very nice. Now, a lot of multi-hulls, there can be a problem with feel at the helm. You feel very detached, but with this boat you definitely don't, and there's two reasons. The first is because you're in the middle of the boat, you're very involved with the sails, you've got a good view of the sails as well. And the second one is the steering. It feels very direct, and that's because the setup is good. You've got cables and then a Jefferson system to the rudders, which feels very direct, and that helps you feel involved with the sailing and makes it a pleasure. And yeah, we don't have much wind today, about between 7 and 10 knots, but at those kind of wind speeds this boat can actually match the speed of the wind. So if you're going 7 knots, it can actually go slightly over 7 knots, which is, well, any monohull sailor will tell you just weird, but it's very good. And you can imagine heading off across the Atlantic at 7 knots as opposed to 5. It makes a huge difference to the speed of a passage, so you've got a good passage maker as well. But more than that, when the wind picks up more, it will be really good fun. I suppose the other thing to say is these Jenicas, or Code Zeros, are really practical sails. They change the way that you can sail a boat as well in light airs, and they're very easy to handle now, so it's really no stress for 2 people to have a big Jenica like that. You can roll it away easily, and yeah, you've got a joyous sailing experience. So as an example, right at the moment, here we have the wind speed, very handy readout by the way. So here's the wind speed, 10.8, and we're doing 9.1 knots. So that gives you some measure of how closely you can match the wind speed, especially at low wind speeds like this, which really it's a game changer in terms of making a passage. Not something I'm used to, having come generally from monohulls. Really, my impressions were very good. There's been a lot of thought and care put into the boat. It sails well, very well it's a blue water cruising multi-hull, so for that genre of boat it sails exceptionally well, and was enjoyable with good feel on the helm. And then as an overall impression, I mean, the interior was lovely. I very much liked it, and I liked the fact they tried to be different, they tried to innovate, and it succeeded. And of course the final thing is really just the environmental considerations, the fact they've gone above and beyond really to create a boat that is as harmonious as is possible with the environment and wastes as little as possible, and that is really a hugely important consideration. So those are really my final thoughts, and essentially it was a wonderful day out on the water.